Welcome to HealthTech Growth, the weekly podcast for healthcare founders and innovators, where we explore essential strategies to create successful and sustainable healthcare startups that improve patient outcomes and transform the healthcare industry.
We are all unique beings, and our health is also unique because in every single ecosystem, it's not just us. It's about people that's surrounding with us, supporting us, and even you feel alone, how do we get you the right support, what we call the empowered ecosystem you deserve to have along with the journey? And innovation nowadays seems like a lot of them, funding, everyone keeps thinking it's harder. But is it truly harder? Or perhaps you haven't been able to position yourself and sharing the right messaging and right information to the investors or even your own team to be able to continue to work hard toward the similar goals. Make sure you don't have anyone who already have one foot out of the door. And we are so passionate about women founders, those who are diversity, who are necessarily not coming from the US, people are underrepresented. Doesn't matter if it's the solution or you yourself. And therefore, we are so excited to have MyPhuong with us. She has a venture studio and space in San Diego, as well as a venture fund, and have amazing events and collective ecosystem that she has been building to support women founders, children, and elderly, and women's health area, as well as diversity founders. So we would love for you to enjoy our conversation today as we're tackling some of the challenges of why we think and how you can overcome some of the mistakes that's been happening in the arena of funding and scaling your company. So thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about your background. How did you get here? Of all the things we can do in life, and you choose this path?
It wasn't planned. I actually have my PhD in pharmaceutical science and actually was in academia for about 9 years. I was over at the Anschutz Medical Campus in Denver. We were working on developing our own IP. I was working with plants trying to discover a therapy to block fructose metabolism and was hoping to see if I can develop this pill that people can take and also be able to eat the cake and not have all the issues that they get from sugar overdose. And so, but we were there at the university trying to develop our IP, and we just really struggled with how do we develop this? How do we get it out there? How can we try and make that impact? And the focus, at the university was just research at the lab bench, and we didn't understand and really got the support to figure out how to move it forward. And so that really sparked our interest in entrepreneurship and learning a little bit more about tech transfer and startups. And that really got us down that road. And we actually, Leah, who's my other co-founder at Aquillius, we co-founded MicroTech in San Diego. And in 2019, we moved here and helped run that company. But COVID hit, and that's all we did was just focus on work, right? It was just work home. But we grew very quickly, but we grew to be just a manufacturing company only. So MicroTech is a manufacturing company, electronics, with a specialty in microelectronics. And so we helped a lot of companies kind of just manufacture, assemble their medical devices. And because we were considered essential medical, we got back up and we were at work building these devices for them. But we just became manufacturing. That wasn't really what Lee and I had wanted to do. We really wanted to kind of create and help support new technologies, new products that could come out there. And so as a result, we spun out of Microtech and created Aquillius. So Aquillius is a innovation hub. So we have that co-working office space, wet lab space, vivarium, clean rooms, and we're just very much interested in creating a collaborative ecosystem so that founders can come together and hopefully be able to help support each other. Because kind of like what you had mentioned is you're feeling that you're alone, that you're kind of the only one, and you kind of have this weird siloing effect. And I think that happens sometimes at universities, and I think it starts very early, right? When we go to undergrad, the first thing they ask us is, what do you guys want to be? Oh, you want to be a biology major? Great. Go to that biology building. You want to be a chemist? Great. Go to that chemistry building. Engineer? You have an engineering building yourself. And so we learn to isolate ourselves and silo ourselves away. And I'm pretty sure you've had conversations with founders who's developing medical device, but they don't talk to the software people. The software people don't talk to the hardware people, and the hardware people don't talk to the scientists, the researchers who's doing this. I'm looking, I don't understand what's going on. You guys need to be able to work together. This is why, apps don't make sense, because you guys didn't go talk to the customer to understand what it is that they need and how they want to interact with the device that's now being implanted in their body. And they need like 3 PhDs just to understand how to control that. So I think we need to do a better job of coming together, learning from each other, and truly coming up with the solutions that the patients and the end users need.
Yeah, it's the integration part. So being in clinical medicine, and before that, I was doing public health work in the communities, figuring out what people need. So I was the one, I think most of founders don't think this way, is you have to get into the trenches. When you feel like there is a gap, you need to first ask the right people, are they needing this? How are they thinking about this problem that you have identified? And then that's how eventually, once you build everything up and you're trying to sell it and you try to get buy-in, that's when people's like, oh, I get it. That's exactly what we were talking about before. And they feel the sense of connection. Yes, some of that is the messaging problem, right? They haven't done enough of their homework, competitive research, and they just go shouting at the top of mountaintop. And you wonder why there's no echo coming, right? There's no one is like raising their hand, just waiting for you to give them the high five. And it's the same thing as earlier today. I was talking to someone who is trying to promote and raising, going to C round for a medical device. And my number one question I said to them is, too many founders put all these big names of people on their team. I'm like, that's great and all. Everyone is an expert in something. But how are you guys working together? Are you guys going to stick together to make sure things happen? And why would anyone try to support you, whether it's with their time, knowledge, or money, if this team is actually not going to go that long, right? And you're just going to play in the beginning and fun and then feel like, oh, someone will take care of this. Then it's no longer a passion, no longer a drive. So I think that's the integration part. What you're saying is that people don't see business and health, everything is interconnected. There's the mind, body, soul of a person. There's also a mind, body, soul of the business. So your device people and your coders and your actually user customer journey type of people, if they're not really on the same page and don't even understand, what are you actually building?
Yeah, I agree. And we see this all the time, right? We see devices and you hear complaints about these glucose monitors that they're having out there, and the customers are just going, this app, the software is not what I want, and it needs to be better, right? And so where are they getting that information? How are they then absorbing that and then improving upon themselves? Because I think this is life, right? There's always room for improvement. But if there's no doors, no way for them to interact with you, then what happens then, right? Then all you hear is just yourself, and you're not getting the right feedback to actually truly help the customer that you're trying to help. right, with the device that you have or whatever technology you're developing.
Exactly. It's intentionally having the right conversation and then be in the space that people wanted to have those conversation with. And sometimes people don't really understand how to ask the right question. You have to help them to get to that point. And I think that's what you do really well and what we do really well is that getting people to ask the right question and seeing a bigger picture and seeing there has to be dots that are connected. And then we believe there are 12 area of business domains that are critical. Not to say you need to have 10 out of 10 on all of them, but there is a process of making things work, right? And then most people, they jump into the business even 5 years in, they're so reversed, right? They're just so focused on the product, putting more money in it, and they don't really truly have the people who are champions to get a point of what that revenue actually look like, who's actually supporting that, what's the buying decision. So I think it could be very chaotic at sometimes, right? But they're not even thinking about, oh, if I build something amazing but no one wants it, it doesn't mean that thing is actually amazing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to who's creating the technology, right? Most of us, especially in the healthcare, in the therapeutics, medical devices, we're the scientists, we're the engineers, right? We went to school not to start a business. We went to school to do the science. We went to school to do the engineering, to develop the technology. And so suddenly you're expecting us to know how to run a business, know how to have conversations with customers, know how to have conversations with investors. It at times doesn't make sense, right? And so I think part of it is for founders realizing that we don't know what we don't know. And I think sometimes investors forget that, right? And then other founders, other people involved in a company don't remember that, and they're only coming from their own perspective. As you mentioned, you might have like 3 or 4 or 5 co-founders, but most likely they're all highly technical people, right? They're not the business person who's going to know how to market your technology or your product and stuff like this. And so that's when you need to go out and grab people. But I think for us, coming from academia and coming from a science background, those are the ones that we're taught to go after, right? The technical experts, because we haven't built our other network, which is the business side of things, right? I didn't go to who surrounded me. It's a bunch of other PhDs and scientists and people, right? If you ask me, who do I know out there, back when I was at the university, who do I know who was running a business? I would scratch my head. I wouldn't have known anyone, right? And so I think this is that very important part of being a founder is really building your network. And you need to go out there and start meeting other people and getting a little bit uncomfortable, because they're not going to just talk science with you. They're going to be talking about other things. But it's important because a whole business takes a lot of people to build it successfully.
Exactly. It's become uncomfortable, but with the uncomfortableness is your authenticness. And simply having conversation, when we mention these diverse area, have conversation with people who are in finance, right? Who used to be CFOs, or people who are in the legal. Not necessarily they have to be your IP attorney, but having those conversation and have conversation with people in PR, in marketing, in sales. You never know what tips and tricks you're going to pick up. And also making sure, especially technical people, they're not really good people, right? Like sometimes you do need to have that innate experts who are building culture. What does that mean to be you? What it's your own personal brand. And then who are the other experts on your team, whether they're technical or business minded? How are you truly going to understand, support each other as you go forward? And doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just going to stay in my lab and build it. You guys go for it, which you can. If you trust the right promoter in your company, we always say there are three, right? You as a visionary, you have to find someone who's really good at operational and strategizing and making things happen. You also need someone who's like the big promoter, right? Like screaming and go chase, having all this conversation. And if that's the person, and you trust that person, you have built a relationship, maybe that's the person that go out, get funding. But you also need to make sure that person is 100% devoted to you and they're not scattered into their own business or all these other things that they're doing on the side. So be dear enough to understand what the foundation looks like, and then to say, how do we actually support each other in the long run is going to be critical. What are some of the things you are also seeing for the population that we focus so much on is the uprising of women leaders as well as diversity leaders?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of noise coming around women's health, which is great because it's something that's been needed for a very long time. And because of that, you're starting to get a lot more female founders coming into play, and they're starting to generate that noise, which I think is very important. But they're hitting walls, right? They're hitting barriers that's out there, not just because we're women, but because they're dealing with a topic that at times can be very uncomfortable, right? And you hear these stories from some of these female founders where they would go into a investor meeting and the men couldn't have a conversation because it was talking about tampons and right, and pads, and they're being organic and all that stuff. And if you don't have them engaging with you, how do you move forward? How do you get them to invest in you? And so it's great to suddenly get this piling of impetus of more and more women and having that conversation, because we need to have that. And I think once you have that one first conversation that's uncomfortable, you're going to have a second one, and then you're going to have a third one, you're going to have that fifth one, and then that 10th one. Fine, you go, oh, okay, this is nothing to be embarrassed about. This is a fact of life. And so I think it's great, and it's going to take effort. It's going to take time, but it's changing, and you're starting to see that. And it's one of the things that we ourselves are trying to support, and this is why we're having a women's health pitch competition during JPM week. Is we want to amplify these efforts, not just female founders, but also our male counterparts who are passionate about creating solutions to help women's health, right? Because in the end, like, women are so essential to life. We're the one who's the next generation that you need. With us, we're the one who takes care of the family. We're the one who supports that whole ecosystem. And I think if we're the one who ends up being sick, that burden goes to someone else, our other partner, right? And so it's definitely something that has been needed, and it's great that we're finally getting a lot of this good noise around generating support around women's health.
Exactly. It's now, especially at Health, Halle Berry announced her platform with menopause, and we did see a lot of women's health more with supporting women to become pregnant, right? Like motherhood, whatnot. And then we start seeing some postpartum help. And now we're seeing the uprise of menopausal health, because every woman go through that at some point. And so we can see that both women leaders stepping up to lead these changes because it's involving their own health, as well as male counterparts have their own story of why they're helping. And even from my board, we have 12 board members, and more than 70% of us are female. And that was the intent to be that way. I think it's just when your goal, your passion is that way, you're naturally attract the good experts who are domain expert, right? We're not saying, hey, we can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? We like to say AR expertise. And sometimes we do have to outsource that and then be able to say, hey, I'm a technology expert. I'm happy where I am. I can see operational efficiency, but I don't want to go so far, right? Just like your typical CFOs, some of them can also step up as your COO, CEO, but not necessarily, right? If they didn't have that experience, you put them in that spot, they're gonna not feel so good about it. But if you leave them in the finance and find someone that can take that spot, they're gonna be naturally just joyful, right? So sometimes it is about the right people take the time to assess where they want to be, having the right conversation and put them in the right role. And then everyone will actually want to stay and continue to work together. And in some capacity, I think women do really well, right? We can build authentic relationship. And at the same time, we cannot rush ourselves either. We have a tendency also, we can just do everything, right? How come it's not done yet, right? Like if I can take on, you can take on. But then we get burned out, and that's not healthy for anyone. Then you kill the joy right under as you move forward.
Yeah. I think when I can't remember what movie it was, a TV show, but I think one of the things that as a founder you don't realize is when you start that company, you're potentially no longer the one that's doing the work. I don't know if I'm making this complicated. Okay. I can't remember the TV show, but let's say you're a dancer, right? And you wanted to create this business to teach dancing to young kids and hopefully inspire them to be, right, the new future dancers. But starting your own business, suddenly now you have to wear 1,000 different hats. You have to learn how to be your accountant. You have to learn how to be the promoter, the marketing, the sales, the one who talks to the landlord and lease out a space. And then suddenly you're no longer the dancer, right? Suddenly you don't have the time to actually go and actually teach the kids. Now you have to go hire someone to teach and train it because now you're so far away from what you started this business to be because it's a business, right? It is 99% doing something else outside of what you are passionate about. So either you're going to understand that and you're going to have to wear those hats and do it yourself. And then you might carve just that small portion of why you did what you did, or you're going to have to find someone who's passionate about your vision and they handle that business side of things. And I think as a founder who's just that N of one, the very first person, it's a huge balancing act, right? Of trying to figure out who you can trust, who you can bring in. You have no money. So who are you going to get in to help share that burden with you so that you can focus on why you did what you did, that passion of being that dancer, of being that scientist who's developing that technology. As a side note, this is one of the things that we see a lot with technical founders is, they're developing that device or that therapy. They're working at the lab bench or working with someone to develop that technology. Then they start going, oh, I need to learn how to manufacture and I need to learn how to do this. And they reach out to manufacturers and then they talk and they realize, oh, this is going to be really expensive. And why is it so much expensive? Because if I did it myself, it's only going to cost $10. But if I hired you, you're going to charge me $50. Forget it. I'm going to now start becoming my own manufacturer of my own product so that it's a lot cheaper. And then suddenly now they have to, become ISO 13485 or become a manufacturer, become a supply chain and all of this, build out a facility, do all of this. And then I'm like, wait a minute. What are you passionate about? Do you want to be the scientist, the engineer who wants to come up with that technology that then can be done and that you can then iterate on how to make it better? Or do you now suddenly want to be the manufacturer, right? What do you want to focus on? And I think sometimes that gets lost a little bit in translation because they're so worried about that final amount and trying to make it as cheap as possible because they don't want to deal with the margins or whatever. But then you start losing what you're passionate about, as you said, and I think that's where you risk being burnt out a lot faster, because now you're concentrating more on something that isn't what you enjoy. But because you can't let go of that dollar, now you're focusing 95% of your business around is being a manufacturer instead of being that scientist or being that person to create that new technology.
Right. It's a lot of time people are focused on the wrong thing. So we always, there's a book called 10 times easier than 2 times. And we embody those principles. What that means is a lot of old school thinking in entrepreneurship is, I'm just going to jump out of the airplane and build a parachute as we go down, right? That's so not sustainable. However, if you are in that 1 to 2 million, or really 2 million less bracket, a lot of people are doing that, right? And our principle is, how about we don't do that? How about we build a foundation that's sustainable from the get-go and doesn't feel like, oh, once I get there, I will fix things. But then you have to fix a lot of corrections. That's actually very costly. What 10 times is easier means you are so focused on the right thing for growth, for connection, for what you meant to do, that everything else is properly delegated, automated, that other people with the right resources, with the right role are picking up. So everyone is enjoyable. And that's when you create that resilient ecosystem that has space, that has health for yourself. Especially we are in healthcare to create health. You cannot say, oh, our system is burning out. Then you are not authentic to what you're trying to promote, right? And then so then at the end of the day, if we don't have fun in what we're doing, why are we even doing it, right? And then eventually then people are going to see that, right? Every person, especially leader and founder, you don't think people are watching you, they are, and they can sense it and they know how things are. And so I believe, MyPhuong, your principle, when you mention it, is the E-Myth principle. So when you are a dancer, right, you are a technical developer, you are an employer model, right? You are so good, so talented at doing things. But when you become a business, you are a stakeholder. And stakeholder need to think about what are the best decisions to this business in what do we have to do. You're no longer doing the work. And you are also now a manager. If you're the quality control person, which we see way too often, right? People become an integrator. Let me talk to that department, that department, that department. Did you guys talk to each other? This is my report. You become your own executive assistant. Stop doing that, right? Like, that's crazy. But people just keep adding them, right? They're going top down and swing back and forth. Then that's why it feels like you're tossing fire torches in the middle of the air while you're being blindfolded because you're not focused on the right thing. You're constantly doing something. But then our psychology, right? Our own reward system feels like, wait, we did something. Hey, that feels good. I'll just keep doing that. But then that's the principle of you just simply doing 2 times. You're grinding it. You're doing it the more and more and more of the work. But that's actually never going to give you the 10 times the result until you're so focused. So that being said, for you guys, as you're collectively putting an ecosystem together and think about funding, which stage of funding are you guys focusing on right now into the next year?
So for us, is we would be interested in funding in the pre-seed seed companies, because those are the very early stages, and they're the one who has the hardest time finding the investors, because a lot of times it's like, oh, show me proof it works, show me that you have that device on hand, and then come back to me, right? And so I think this is why we had invested in Aquillius and building out this innovation hub and building that foundation, as you said, that's so important, since because they do need these resources, from compressed air to clean rooms to a cell culture room. You just can't build that in your garage, like a software can do, right? And so that's why we did what we did, is created that facility. And then I think sometimes when we're out there in the startup community, a lot of times you're going to these networking events, you're going here, you're going there, and you're going here. You do it, and then it kind of just gets lost in the cloud because there's no physical place to kind of come back to. And so we built Aquillius intentionally to focus on that facility, because I think there is that need for that physicality, right? You need that place where, oh, I know it exists. I know I can go there and get the help I need. I know I can probably be there and meet someone that is in alignment or could potentially connect me with other people. And so we're hoping that our hub is just that foundation that, these startups can come together and be able to network and support each other. And they might meet an investor, or they might meet that new employee that they need to hire in, or something like this. And I think being in that close proximity helps. And so this is kind of what we're interested in, is creating that collaborative ecosystem.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm super excited that we got connected, and can't wait to also be going to your event in JPM and then be looking at some of the pitches. We're always in the excitement of seeing possibilities in the pipeline and highlighting the best innovation out there. So for everyone, check the show note, register if you happen to be in JPM, and the event, I believe, is on Monday evening, and we can't wait to see you there. And then also check out the website to see if you're in San Diego space, that could be a good hub for you to join, and all the other amazing events coming up the pipeline. I know as we are wrapping up the new year, our Impact Award is actually taking applicants, and for those winners that we are giving you a whole pipeline, a marketing strategy on how do you continue to gain engagement from the community and place you on multiple media platforms to really showcase, because we don't want you to be a best hidden genius. We want you to be able to shine, to get people to stand behind you, to build your empowered ecosystem. So apply. It's actually a free application very quickly to be able to share with us your impact. And hopefully you're moving on to round 2 or round 3, so we can actually, I'll sit down with our VC partners to take a look at your company and give you the feedback you need. All right, we can't wait for seeing all the amazing possibilities you guys are doing in San Diego, meeting everyone in JPM. If you happen to be there, reach out to MyPhuong and myself, and love to have a conversation and meet in person. Until next time, bye guys. Any last words from you?
Nope, we're good. See you guys in JPM.
Thank you for listening to HealthTech Growth. If you're a healthcare tech innovator or founder interested in being a featured guest on our show, visit healthtechgrowth.io to learn more.